Welcome to the May 19th edition of the PFF Forecast. A great episode today. We've got Aaron Nagler. We're previewing the NFC North, and of course, no conversation can happen about the NFC North unless it starts with Aaron Rodgers. And there's probably no person that knows more about that situation from team and from Aaron's perspective than Aaron Nagler. Great conversation. He drops a ton of knowledge. We also talk, of course, about the Vikings, the Bears, and a little bit about the Lions. Let's rock. Before we get to Aaron, we just have to check in on a very key conversation that we've been having. Let's rate the fit here. Collar shirt, okay, that's not bad.
Yep.
Nice shorts, they're not wrinkled. You're wearing real shoes. So we're making a real step.
We're making
in the right
progress.
direction.
Now the question is, so we have to. Because obviously yesterday's pod, Chris's pod, I dressed up. In your words, for Chris.
Yes, of course.
This podcast, I might have dressed up for Aaron.
Yep.
So Sunday is the real test. If I can come back from the gym
Sunday is
looking
the
okay
test.
on Sunday, then we know that a real there's been a regime shift, if you will.
A new leaf has turned over.
Speaking of Adam, by the way.
Yeah, speaking of Adam.
His attire. You think he and Eve had a podcast back in the day?
Do you think they rated each other's
2
fits?
leaves?
I don't know.
3 leaves, probably.
I'm not going to get into the leaf discussion. All right, we're good. This is a great
My
conversation.
dad might like that joke. Hey, Dad.
My mother will like that joke as well. We have got a great conversation, so we're not going to waste your time getting to it. He spent about an hour with us, and it's all good. Especially, I'll note, the conversation at the end was also really good. So Aaron Nagler, Cheesehead TV, the Packers, he knows everything about the frickin' Packers. Let's get it. Before we get to Aaron, got to tell you a couple things that are going on. First off, at PFF, if you like this podcast, you're going to love a couple of other podcasts. Ian Harditz does our fantasy football podcast. First off, he is a genius. The dude knows more data points that will align with fantasy football than any human on earth, and he makes sure he gives them to the people. He gives the people what they want. There's no better fantasy football podcast to get real, actionable information and data quickly than Ian Hart's podcast. So go check that out. Also, Mike Renner and Austin Gale, the best draft podcast that is actually also just a really good podcast in general. The 2-for-1 Drafts podcast with Mike and Austin is a must listen. So if you like us or tolerate us, I think you'll like them. Go check them out. Other thing I got to tell you, DraftKings and DraftKings Sportsbook is giving you a pretty nice opportunity here with the NBA playoffs. Fuck, I wish. If you bet on the over for any game, any playoff game, you will have a hand in lowering the total by 1 point. So every 1,500 players that bet the over, the total will drop by a point. So hopefully, by the time game time rolls around, it's a very low total. You're assured of winning, and then you can take your spoils and you can bet them on the Bears or the Vikings or whoever the hell it is that you want to bet on in NFL futures. You got to use promo code PFF to make that happen. At sign up, it's on the DraftKings Sportsbook app. You should go do it now because this promo will not last forever. It ends 5/23/21. You must be 21 or older. New Jersey, Indiana, Pennsylvania are the only places. Restrictions apply. It's a max $25 wager, one per customer. As I said, offer ends May 23rd. See DraftKings.com/sportsbook for details. If you have a gambling problem, call 1-800-GAMBLER or 1-800-9-WITH-IT. Last thing, hey, if you bought crypto right now, you might be, I don't know, depending on where you bought it and didn't sell, a little pissed. Don't worry, Symbol's got your back. At Symbol, you can go buy shares of NFL, NBA, NHL.
I just bought a share of the 49ers, so I'm
There you
sorry,
go.
by the way.
You've kiboshed them. But it's basically like a stock market for sports teams. You can go buy shares of team stock. You get paid a dividend when they win games, and of course, you can trade that stock as the price fluctuates. Major League Baseball is in full swing. I have no fucking idea why you'd ever be watching it. But if you want a reason to, you could buy some stock in an MLB team. I literally couldn't tell you anything about what's going on in baseball because
the Tony La Russa stuff?
Oh yeah, I can tell you Tony La Russa is an idiot. I didn't need the recent stuff to tell you that. But you can make it more interesting by buying shares in Major League Baseball teams. Maybe it takes you through the summer. I personally will be investing in NFL teams. I love your Niners play. Use promo code PFF when you deposit $10 at Symbol and get a free PFF Edge annual subscription. That costs you $40 normally. You get it with a $10 deposit at Symbol, SIMBULL.app/PFF. It's a great deal. Go make it happen. And now, Aaron Nagler. It is our distinct honor to once again welcome the great Aaron Nagler, former foe, now a friend. I was thinking about this the first time that
frenemies, maybe. Well,
yeah. Okay.
I think frenemies though is a present term, which I think we've gone past enemies. Like it's just friends.
Oh, we have. That's true.
I would say there's a respect there where we can make fun of each other now, and it's not it's not biting. But for people that
I was trying to keep up the bit, but now you've punctured it.
Yeah,
so now
we're killing people with kindness over here.
But we've turned the corner, really. But for people who are listening to this and do not know, where this stems from is what feels like 5 years ago, the Seahawks and the Packers played in the playoffs. And in the run-up to that game, I believe the term I used, I want to say it was like overrated or something about the Packers. Or the most overrated.
I think the word was fraud, maybe.
Fraud. Oh, yeah.
Fraudulent.
Yeah, fraudulent.
Most fraudulent 13-3 team of all time, I believe, was uttered at some point.
Which, granted,
even doesn't matter was a phrase that was used.
Granted, the group of 13-3 teams is pretty small.
Yes.
So somebody has to be that.
I fell on the sword.
But did we decide that was the Saints last year now?
I think we decided that the 08 Titans were the for most fraudulent, the Kerry Collins Titans.
And
what a pull.
So as a result, there was a nice little feud that stemmed there, and it was a little contentious at first, and we buried the hatchet. We had you on, and this is now like the third or fourth time, and it's
right.
I think we did this last year to prove.
I'll interject here and say, the thaw happened because we met in real life at the Combine. And, chilling and having beers and talking football is always a way to peace in our time.
Correct.
There's zero doubt. If
you
have an issue with anybody online, meet them in life, have beers, talk about it, and you're more likely going to get past it.
You mean to tell me that interacting solely on social media is not the way?
I'm just saying, I'm trying to forge a brand new, kind of brave new world here where people actually talk to each other in real life. I don't know. I think maybe it'll catch on. I think we'll see.
I think that's always fun, and obviously that's what we missed this year with the Combine and the Super Bowl and all that good stuff. And hopefully we can get that back this year.
I think it's coming back pretty quickly. I went to try and buy like plane flights last night, and I was like,
everything is crazy.
People are moving. People are traveling, no doubt.
All right, let's start with this. So, for anyone who does not know, Aaron Nagler is I would say the person I go to first when I want to know anything about the Packers or Rodgers or anything Green Bay related. You're the number one person, and so it makes sense to start with this. Pretend we are complete novices. We know nothing. We've been subject to a bunch of random shit spewed from social media. I want to know from you, what is the genesis? Tell us the Aaron Rodgers story. What's your timeline? What are the facts that you believe to be true? How would you tell the story?
What is that? That reminds me of the line from Princess Bride. Let me explain. No, there's too much. Let me sum up.
Synthesize for us.
Look, I'm glad you threw it in there. From what I know or think to be true, because obviously there's a whole lot that has gone on behind the scenes that we are not privy to on the outside looking in. I can say, we were talking before we went on here, like the report itself came at a surprising time. I was not surprised by the report. The idea that Rodgers is frustrated to a point where he is ready and more than willing to drop a media bomb, so to speak, leading up to the draft. That tactic at first was surprising, but when I really thought about it, it took me a little bit, and then I thought, wait a second, you remember last year when he literally talked about sitting at home and being blindsided by the selection of Jordan Love, and then he goes out and has an MVP season, turns around and says to Brian Gutekunst, well, now it's your turn to squirm. That's kind of what I think has happened here. Now, as far as the lead up to it, I mean, this goes back a long way. I don't think, and again, we haven't heard from Aaron, so we really don't know what's true and what's, how much fire there is underneath the smoke. I do know the frustration is real. There's zero doubt about that. I know we've seen reports about him wanting Gutekunst fired, things about how the team letting go. Jake Kumaro was the last straw, etc. Again, like a lot of this is probably easily dismissed, but I know he's been frustrated throughout his kind of Green Bay tenure, whether it goes back to even when Ted was in charge. Brian obviously came on after Ted, and one of the very, very first major moves that Brian made was letting go of Jordy Nelson. Now, this is how Green Bay has operated. They obviously don't talk to their quarterback about these moves. Aaron clearly feels he is in a spot in his career where not only does he have something to offer as far as guys that he thinks should be brought in or guys who should be kept around, but I think he probably feels like, yeah, not only do I have something to offer, I've earned a right at the table to at least be part of those conversations. Clearly, that's not how Green Bay operates. Never has been. So that kind of, to me, is not surprising. The contentious back and forth, the drama, if you will, between the two sides, I think it's been building for a while. Where I think the Packers really erred here, and a lot of people, I get a lot of accusations that because I am a Packers fan, that I just defend the team full tilt no matter what. And I can obviously say here that the biggest mistake the Packers made here, and I'm with the Packers as far as like, yeah, Rodgers isn't the GM, nor should he be. He shouldn't be in those conversations. I'm fine with that. But where the Packers really screwed up, to me, it goes back up to Mark Murphy, the CEO and president of the team, who was literally there the last time they went through this with Brett Favre.
Yeah.
He was fresh on the job at that point, but he clearly went through it. He knows everything that happened as far as Brett and the acrimonious kind of way he held the franchise after the selection of Aaron Rodgers and all the drama that ensued. Mark Murphy's the one guy who had a front row seat to all this, has some on-the-job training. You have to think at some point when Brian Gutekunst, because this is what Mark did, he made himself more involved on the football side when he restructured the power structure in Green Bay and now wants in on weekly or bi-weekly meetings with the general manager and the head coach and Russ Ball, the cap guy. They all report to him now. Well, at some point, Gutekunst said, Mark, there's a good chance that I could take a quarterback in this draft. Obviously, this is last year. Mm-hmm. Mark Murphy not stepping in at that moment and saying, you have got to let Aaron Rodgers know. I understand this is how we've always operated. I understand it kind of goes against our standard MO. But if anyone on this earth has earned the right to at least be told that we might select a quarterback, it's Aaron Rodgers, the guy who not only stirs the drink in Green Bay, but has basically kept us all employed for the last decade.
Yeah,
he
Aaron,
absolutely should know. And Mark didn't do that. And it blows my mind that the guy who, like I said, made this restructure because what he saw, and he has said publicly, was a lack of communication within the football side, then now turns around and doesn't communicate to his GM this one very important point. Because I do think it's not happenstance, it's not coincidence that this news dropped on the day of the draft. Yeah. It does, I think, lead right back to the selection of Jordan Love the year before.
Why? I was going to say, why? Because he's not a stupid guy. Like, do you believe it was a sin of omission or a sin of commission? Why didn't he say something?
It's a great, great question. It's something I want to ask Mark directly the next time he's made available, because we have not been able to talk to him since this news broke. We talked to him a few times this offseason prior to the Schefter report, but I have no idea. It's the one thing that I keep coming back to that I can't believe this very simple thing didn't happen. And it's interesting how Murphy's tenor has completely changed. You don't follow the Packers day in and day out the way I do, but immediately after the NFC Championship game lost, you remember Rodgers making some very pointed comments at his press conference, the post-game press conference, about his future and the mystery around it and what have you. And very shortly thereafter, even maybe like a day or two after that, Mark Murphy had a laughing quote that said, "We're not idiots. We're not trading Aaron Rodgers," like blah, blah, blah. Well, now you fast forward to the next time we were able to talk to Mark, and Rob Domofsky asked him about what had been bubbling, and we all knew about, kind of this tension with Rodgers, and Mark's tone had completely changed to, I can't talk about anybody, these are contract matters, blah, blah, blah. Well, at that point, it was pretty clear that, okay, something was up. And this is before the Schefter thing. So it was clear that this has been building. And at that point, we now know, according to Schefter's timeline, that is right smack dab in the middle of when Mark was most likely flying to talk to Aaron. on a apparently a couple times a weekly basis. I don't know how many times it happened, but Mark, Matt, Brian, presumably, have all made their trip. And like I said, the tone completely shifted from we're not idiots to, oh, we can't talk about that.
Aaron,
so
do you think
that's why I keep saying it's very real what's going on between these two sides.
Aaron, do you think that the history of the Green Bay Packers really plays into this in a way that, like, I mean, when you look at the history of the team, you're talking about 3 Hall of Fame quarterbacks, right? And probably 20 years of really desolate play, right? Like just awful quarterback play, followed by basically continuous Hall of Fame quarterback play. And because I worry that this is like a cautionary tale, because I know you tweet out, and I generally agreed with this until this situation where you say, usually when you don't want to draft a quarterback at the moment you need one, you want to draft one beforehand. And I think that it obviously worked for Green Bay when they've drafted every guy, with Brunell, Ty Detmer, all those guys, Aaron Rodgers being the last one. But at the same time, I think about the way things are working now with some of these quarterbacks where it's so difficult to get out from under them in many ways. And the rookie quarterback contract the edge is almost completely in playing them early, where the bar is so much lower. They can be a Jared Goff type of player and you can still win with them because they're so inexpensive. Is there a problem, I think, with when you have a Hall of Fame QB? I'm not talking about like Kirk Cousins. I'm not talking about Stafford. I'm not talking about good quarterbacks. I'm talking about when you have Brady, when you have Rodgers, when you have Drew Brees. Is there something to this idea that you just let it play out and then move on? Because it does seem like it's the awkwardness there of either letting him go, taking on a ton of dead money in doing so, or playing out the string where, like, Jordan Love might be let's say things work out really well for Green Bay and Rodgers returns and Rodgers continues to play well. Jordan Love might never play for them, and as such, that first round pick, it's sort of like, it's a lottery ticket that didn't hit. It's fine.
It's a sunk cost.
Yeah, exactly.
Right.
So have you changed your mind at all about this idea of drafting a quarterback, especially now with the new CBA, when you already have an elite guy? Should you just rip the Band-Aid off and cut the guy right away, like last year at the time, or play it out until he retires and then say, look, we're not going to be great for the next couple of years, which I can see Packers fans not wanting because you had to deal with the 70s and the early 80s and stuff like that.
Some of us. I mean, I got a lot of young Packers fans in my mentions. Nothing about
but you know what I'm trying to ask. I think this is I think the bridge from Hall of Fame QB to Hall of Fame QB was only singular in the Packers sense, and the 49ers sense with Steve Young. Everything else has been mostly like this transition has been super awkward
and hard and fruitless a lot of the time. I mean, the Dolphins are still searching for a guy after Dan Marino.
Yeah.
So, I mean, have I changed my mind? No, not at all. I think the Packers definitely were trying to have their cake and eat it too. There's no doubt about that. And I think, in Aaron's own words, his play last year, his MVP level play, certainly messed up some time. I don't think there's any doubt about that. I think Aaron saw the writing on the wall. He knew how the contracts lined up. He was pretty certain that he would probably be playing in Green Bay one more year and then be shipped off. That could still happen. I'm not entirely sure that that's not still a possibility. Now, all of that said, I understand everything you guys say when it comes to the taking advantage of the rookie contract. There is zero doubt of the advantage there. I completely understand it. But there's nothing that says you can only win one way. And the Packers, as you say, have a very entrenched history now since Ron Wolf came on board. They've won a ton of boatload of ball games, and they've obviously acquired and drafted 2 Hall of Fame quarterbacks and developed, I might throw in there as well. Has the league landscape changed? Obviously. I think Brian saw the opportunity to add a guy who he really likes, clearly. And yes, he is willing to have him sit, even though it'd be, obviously, from a team construction standpoint, probably be more advantageous to have him on the field and jettison the old guy, so then you can use that capital around him to build your team, right? I don't doubt for a second that is a way a lot of teams are going to win in the NFL. But that doesn't mean it's the only way to win. Mm-hmm. And I know there's history of cap percentage as far as what you allocate to a quarterback and how no guy taking up that amount of cap has ever won a championship, etc. I get that, but that doesn't mean the Packers can't be the first.
Well, and you guys have been in.
I'm all for. I love the idea of Jordan Love sitting for a few years and learning, just like Aaron did. Yes, the league is very different, but there's nothing to say that Jordan Love coming in and playing right away and then freeing up all this cap space. I mean, you talk about the burned first-round pick, and I do get that a lot with, oh, you wasted a first-round pick if he never plays or what have you. How is that any different than saying they took another guy on the defensive side of the ball who doesn't live up to expectations and really never pans out?
Well,
I'd much rather have the possibility of
and that's
security at the quarterback position. To me, the upside there is way higher than, say, picking some random corner or defensive line.
Well, and I think that's how people have to think about the Jordan Love pick after it's all said and done. And I think where the Packers erred, because if your quarterback's Matt Ryan and you can't get rid of him for 2 years, if your quarterback's Aaron Rodgers, you can't get rid of him for 2 years, and you decide to do this, you have to be on the same page with your quarterback and say, look, we are not playing Jordan.
That's their fatal flaw in this regard, right?
We're not playing Jordan Love. We are not replacing you with Jordan Love. We are drafting Jordan Love in the event that something happens, but he is not because I agree with you, Aaron. Like if you draft Mike Hughes there and he fucking sucks and you get nothing out of him, what's really the difference?
Well, it's a damned if you do, damned if you don't situation. I remember we talked you and I did the post-draft thing, and the first thing I said was Aaron Rodgers is going to be fucking amazing this year.
Yeah.
Okay. Now, I'm not saying that he wouldn't have still been amazing, Aaron, because both Aarons I'm talking to, I think the potential for him to have been an MVP obviously was there. But if you don't get the MVP season and say that he even regresses more, say he's less excited to be a Packer than he was even the year before, and it metastasizes. Well, then we're sitting here and going, maybe they should have drafted a quarterback last year, I
mean, that's the thing, but people forget that. Like that last year with McCarthy and then the first year with Matt, they were not world beaters. He was not on fire the way he was last year. And I get it, second year in the system, that is always the thing that gets thrown out there, like, oh, he's naturally developing. Come on, it doesn't take a second year in the system for a professional quarterback to learn where his check down is. I'm sorry. The big thing last year that he really improved upon was his efficiency and playing from the pocket, which is something many of us on the outside, I know Greg Cosell has been screaming this for years, have been begging him to do. And then all of a sudden last year, his supposed heir apparent has been drafted, and suddenly he's dedicated himself to playing from the pocket. Mm-hmm. It's really interesting how that timing worked out. So again, I get what Brian was trying to do, and given how his quarterback was not playing up to the level he had been, I understand wanting to get ready for the future. I mean, I don't think that's like a crazy idea if you're the Packers.
I remember we really honed in on this idea of accept it, and buying into the scheme and taking whatever you could from it and making the most of it. And you saw that. Now, would he have still been as motivated to do that without Jordan Love? Who knows? My question, the follow-up that I have to this is it really as simple as a blown communication here? Because if any of us working in any facet of life or just living in life with a relationship, know, and I've said this before, you can have a great relationship with mutual respect, and as soon as communication breaks down, it can go from respect to hate and anger really quick. Is it that simple, or is there anything else that we're not putting into the equation?
Yeah, I think that could be like the spark to the tinder, right? I mean, there's no doubt that plays a major role. I think this kind of Chinese wall between personnel and the players. And I'll tell you this, since this Rodgers stuff has come out, I have talked to more than one guy in that locker room and who used to be in that locker room who have all expressed their frustrations with how Green Bay goes about their business when it comes to, whether it's back when Micah Hyde was up for free agency and they never even reached out to him. Another thing they did again this year with Corey Linsley, who's coming off
it's the most valuable center in football.
His first all-pro selection ever. You would think you'd get a courtesy call. It's like, look, we'd love to keep you around, but obviously we are strapped cap-wise, etc. Good luck out there. If you don't find something you like on the open market, we'd more than love to have you back and talk about whatever. They didn't do that with Corey. They didn't do that with Micah back in the day. To me, that's ridiculous. I mean, how do you operate in just such a callous manner towards these guys, and you're the supposed draft and develop program. Well, Micah Hyde developed, and then you don't even talk to him, you don't even wish him well, and then he goes out to Buffalo and proves how good he was becoming. You develop that guy, at least talk to him. So that's been a growing theme from what I can sense, talking to guys, like I said, both in and outside the locker room who have been in the locker room. I just think, and you talk about the Packers and their history, everybody comes through that building. Obviously trained under Ron Wolf, at least most of the guys who have gone on to become GMs, whether it's John Schneider, whether it's Reggie McKenzie, now Brian in Green Bay, they all come through what Ron taught them, Ted too, in Seattle, and then obviously in Green Bay. And I do start to wonder that maybe, okay, you've had this quote unquote way of working that has been very fruitful and you have had a lot of success, but the league is changing. You've seen the grumblings of all these quarterbacks. You've seen this idea of the NFLPA pushing back on things now, albeit maybe not as successfully as they would hope as far as voluntary workouts, what have you. But man, the players are getting more of a voice. The players are having a little bit more power. Now, I don't think it'll ever be NBA levels, but they certainly are more kind of vocal, and they have a little bit more kind of leverage than they maybe have had in the past. And I think the Packers need to adjust in that regard, because if they don't talk to a Micah Hyde, that's going to get out there. Your fans are going to hear about it, and your fans are going to be like, what in the hell are you doing? So I just think they've had a lot of success. It would not kill them to maybe adjust some of these rules they have around how they operate. Because, again, whether it is cutting Jordy Nelson, whether it is releasing Jake Kummerow after Rodgers was on the radio talking good about him, whatever, these things all build up. And when you throw in the fact that they don't communicate to Rodgers, especially before they're about to take a quarterback, I can see how that would piss a guy off after a while, to the point where he might go nuclear in the media.
Well, and they act,
Rodgers has done.
They act, so I agree with you, and they act incredulous towards Rodgers for being a person about all this, right? For expressing his, and partially,
but to be fair, they have kissed his ass royally since this thing came out. I mean, we've had Matt up there going, we want him back in the worst way. We've had Brian saying he's our guy. Like, they have showered him with praise.
But you see how
the stuff behind the scenes that seems to be the issue.
Well, you see what's happened since he's entered the league. I mean, what they did what the Favre situation was very calculated and cold by Green Bay, right? They sort of nudged him into retirement before he was ready to, allegedly.
Well, he kept talking about it, though.
Yeah,
too.
sure.
He was pissed because they didn't trade for Randy Moss. I mean, there's a lot there.
Yeah, the Javon Walker thing. Like, they've acted extremely, as you said, business-like in everything they've done. And, and the same thing.
They're pretty ruthless. That's the thing. Yeah. Like, people, they love to sell this image of, the fan-owned team, and it's all beer and cheese curds and brats up here, but they are a ruthless group, and that's partly why they've been successful. But it can alienate people. There's zero question about it.
And so when Rodgers decides to do the stuff that he's doing, Jeopardy, right? Not living in Green Bay all the time.
It's been the summer of Rodgers.
Yeah,
okay, I haven't been able to escape him.
Exactly. All the stuff that Rodgers is doing is just looking out for himself, which I think we've been conditioned as sports fans and analysts to believe the player needs to be team first. But I think you're right, Aaron. You're like, look at the league now, and these quarterbacks realize that no one wants to watch Jeff Driscoll play football. No one wants to watch Kyle Allen play football.
Not even Jeff Driscoll's mother is out here.
Exactly. So, or like even like the one year was like Seneca Wallace, Scott Tolzien, Matt Flynn. It's just like no one wants to watch this. They understand that
Scott Tolzien,
that they're the guys, right? And so for them to act as businessmen with the team that have acted as ruthless businessmen. The thing I get frustrated with this Rodgers situation is, real or not, imagined or not, the orientation that many have had towards Rodgers, which is one of negativity, I feel like is unwarranted. I think Rodgers has done a great job for Green Bay. He's always supported everything, and especially outwardly. Like, I think anybody who, and that might be what Rodgers' frustration is like, well, you played the game with Favre, right? That ended up working out well, so I can understand why you're going to play the game with me on the back end of my career. But I
saw how you operated. That's the thing.
If
right?
I turn it over on you and become an MVP, much like Favre was in 2007, then I want to be treated really well. And it looks like it hasn't been to his liking. And unfortunately, in the NFL for the Packers, it's to the quarterback's liking now.
Yeah, it's definitely going that way.
I keep thinking about, like, when you have these ways of doing things, and then you know it's successful, and maybe one of the worst things you can have is like a rubric that works because you're like I'm
Right.
why would I adjust?
Stop talking about the Steelers, okay?
Why would I adjust? And it's such a good point. I just think it's like this is a football team, but this is a life question. And it's like a how you treat people question. And I guess, you know, from my perspective, and I'm curious if you agree with this, Aaron, like you have to continually update the way you work, the way you interact with people, because times change faster every year than they do the year before. And to say that the way it worked 5 years ago is the way we should attack something now, to me is nearsighted. Do you think that's tenable? Can they take the things that have been successful and adapt them? Or is it something where, no, you actually have to just upset the apple cart. You have to change everything.
Yeah, no, I think they're adaptable, and I think they do adapt. What's funny is I tried to ask Brian about this. This is before the Rodgers drama happened, but kind of along this vein of how much do you adjust? And my question was around the idea that they've been really good at identifying in the draft offensive linemen and wide receivers, not so much at other positions like corner or defensive line. Mm-hmm. And my question to Brian, which was a poor one because he didn't really, I think, get what I was after, but exactly what you're talking about, as far as, okay, you've operated a certain way and you've had some success, but how much do you go back and look at, okay, maybe this isn't working, or maybe that is not bearing the kind of fruit or giving us the ROI that we should be getting? How often do you go back and look at your process? And Brian's answer was, well, we do it every year. We look at everything. We self-scout, etc. But everybody does that. You know what I mean? Every team is constantly kind of evaluating the past year. But to your point, I think there's a really good chance that they have to kind of take a much bigger look as far as a 30,000-foot view of they've been working the scouting department, the personnel group, the Ron Wolf way for so long. And it's been very successful. But to your point, man, things change each year, each way of communicating. Hell, the way you can connect with players now is so entirely different than it was 5 years ago, let alone 30 years ago. I just think they have to make some kind of change there, because I can't believe in this day and age where every player is immediately, I mean, you hear from guys all the time, I found out about it on Twitter, whether it was a move that affected him or his team or what have you, prior to the team letting the guy know, he's finding out about it on social media. There's got to be a better way, and I think Green Bay would be well served to try and kind of be a little bit more forward thinking in that regard.
Communication is so massive. We're gonna. I promise we're gonna stop talking about Rodgers. The final question I have is, I want you to kind of put a stake. It's fascinating. Put a little bit of a stake in the ground here. Fill in the blank. Aaron Rodgers starts blank games for the Green Bay Packers this season.
20.
Ooh,
my guy.
So they get the 1 seed and a bye.
And
then they win the Super Bowl.
And they march.
They're going to go scorched earth. After all of this, are you kidding me?
Yeah.
Man, just look out. The Packers are going to go scorched earth on everybody. Okay. Rodgers will be back. They're going to go kill it. I can't wait. I'm really excited.
Yeah, the J and AJ stands for January. AJ Dillon.
Finally
get to use that one.
Yeah, it'll be fourth.
You've been holding that for a while, I can tell.
Look, it'll be 4th and 1 instead of 4th and 8, and they'll decide to go for it.
Oh, come on. Don't look back. Only looking forward.
But something has to happen for that to be the case, right? Like there has to be. We can't just have status quo, and then people show up and play games. Like,
do they trade Jordan Love?
Someone's got to do something.
No, they're not going to trade Jordan Love. Maybe they do something to Aaron's contract, is my hunch, but
okay.
I don't think it's going to be anything that locks Green Bay in completely. I do think, though, I really do think, and I know people have thrown water on this every which way but loose, but I honestly believe, for the most part, Aaron has just enjoyed watching the Packers twist for the last month. And I think there will be a resolution. I would be absolutely shocked if he actually sits out any significant amount of time. I do suspect there's a little bit of Michael Strahan right here going on. Like, I'm out in Hawaii. You guys have fun at practice. I'll show up when I'm needed.
They did win a Super Bowl that year.
Because I can, because I'm Aaron Rodgers, which is the whole jettison of this argument.
And Strahan now hosts a very popular show.
Well, I was gonna say, Aaron,
indeed.
Maybe this is too soon, but the Giants did win a Super Bowl that year.
Yeah,
that was exactly my point. There you go. I remember. Do you remember that though? Because
Yeah.
Michael was just bombarded with, he's so
and
selfish and blah blah blah.
Yeah.
Especially back then, the
Yeah.
attitudes towards players was very different. And then he literally showed up, probably right before, it was right before the season, 10 days before the season started. Missed all of training camp. Came in great shape. They went on March 1 the Super Bowl.
Giants started 0-2. The second game in that season was
second
a
game was against the Packers. I was at
blowout
it.
loss to the
That's right.
Packers at home. Ryan Grant's breakout game. if
That's
you will.
right.
That's right.
And
A legend.
And then of course that was when Favre started getting soft, in 2006. And then I remember I was living in Fargo, and my roommate and best friend is from Sheboygan. And so we were hanging out
Land
that
of my
night,
birth.
and the hair inside of our nose was freezing. It was so cold, and that
beautiful.
weather made its way to Lambeau for the NFC title game.
Yes, it did.
What is so let's transition now Packers more kind of at large here, and it's interesting.
Right.
I mean, they're currently in week 1 a 2.5-point underdog on DraftKings Sportsbook. Their win total is not
To
up.
Jameis Winston Saints.
Right, to Jameis Winston.
Right.
So clearly the market not as sold on you
As I am, yeah.
yeah,
On Rodgers being back.
on
I got
Rodgers.
you.
And the win total's not up there. That you can bet them to win the division. Obviously, you can't bet them technically to lose the division, but they're minus 177 to win the division,
Which has gone up in recent days, so that's a good sign that
they're listening to Aaron.
Clearly.
something's
They
happening.
follow me on Twitter, right?
But I do want to ask you about the counterfactual. Okay, so let's say Rodgers is gone. What's your opinion of Jordan Love if you can have one right now? And where are the
Right.
Packers with Jordan Love? I'm just curious. I mean, because I don't want to be the person that says, oh, because he didn't suit up for a game, he must suck. Okay, I'm going to
Right.
try not to do that. So I'm
And
going
the
to
plan was
ask
always
you.
for him not to suit up for games. I mean, that was 100% the idea of that's why they kept Tim Boyle around. What do they look like with Jordan Love? I think they're very run-centric, and I think there's a lot less stuff at the line of scrimmage for the quarterback to change. But I do think Matt's system will help him, and I do think it will give him some delineated reads. But at some point, he's going to have to make a throw from the pocket on 3rd and 8, right? And that's where he's going to probably have his growing pains, and he's going to have to take his lumps. And look, if this is the first year of Jordan Love under center for the Green Bay Packers, it is not going to be a Super Bowl campaign. It's going to be a tough slog. And I think they've got the talent to win some games with Jordan at quarterback, but there's no doubt. I mean, the kid is second year in the league, has not taken a snap.
Mm-hmm.
He's going to maybe, hopefully have a bunch of preseason work this year. Outside of that, we haven't seen much from him. We know he's got the tools. He can make any throw. His legs are awesome. He's got the athleticism. He's going to make plays. I have no doubt about that. But just the reality of life in the NFL is if he has to start, it's not going to be pretty. And I don't think any Packers fans should fool themselves into, because I have people in my mentions like, well, Matt's scheme is just going to make it easy.
Right.
All he has to do is be competent. I'm like, do you have any idea?
It's like the
does
Mac
anyone remember
Jones
Brett Hundley?
conversation.
Hundley was competent, and he was still
Yeah.
looked terrible. It's like it's just reality of life in the NFL that if Jordan has to start, it's not going to be pretty.
Would you rather have Justin Fields or Jordan Love? Because I'm thinking about it from I'm about to ask you, who are you most worried about? And you talked about the Bears last year. The Bears now, have Justin Fields comes in as a rookie. Have you seen stuff with Love in practice or heard things, about that makes you willing to say, I'd actually rather have Jordan Love than Justin Fields?
Well, I'd rather have Jordan Love anyway. But the idea that Justin Fields, I do love. Already on Twitter, there's the split screen of the headline from Mitch Trubisky's first rookie minicamp about how quote unquote good he looked, and now we've got the same headlines about Justin Fields, and that's not to take anything away from Fields. I'm sure he's going to be a very good quarterback.
He'll be a Bears
Very
quarterback.
successful career. Oh, yeah, but he did go to Chicago. I want Jordan Love. The Packers selected him, and he has got all the tools, and he's a year in the NFL. He's not some scrub in a Pop Warner outfit. I'm all in on Jordan. I think he's got all the ability in the world. I think he's got every single tool you could ever want to play quarterback in the NFL. He just needs to play. And nobody's seen him do that. Not at the NFL level. So not in the scheme. It's gonna be a lot of fun to watch if it happens, but it's gonna be frustrating at times. There's zero doubt.
How do you think the market would weigh them, Eric?
If they had Love, so
Just Love versus Fields, because we've seen market implied, offensive power ranking for rookie quarterbacks is low going into this
Lower.
year. What do you think? What do you think the market would feel?
yeah.
about
So
Love?
I think So right now the Packers are about in the market,
Yeah.
like 0.8 points better than the average team out of neutral. We have them about 3 points, 3.5 points better than a regular team out of neutral field, which is top 4 in the NFL. So that difference is something like, I mean, they're basically splitting the difference, right? So 2.5, almost 3, 2.5 points. So double that's 5. We have Rodgers being about 7.5 points better than a normal quarterback on a neutral field ish. I got to actually look at the numbers. I would say Love is probably considered 1.5, 2 points better than an average quarterback, or not an average, a replacement quarterback on a neutral, which is right around where I would put, like it's about a point to half a point lower than I put Burrow and all those other guys.
And in Fields, you'd put
Fields, I'd put like a half point better than Love at this point. But I mean, Fields is a top 11 pick. Jordan Love is a top 30 pick, so it's like just a little different from expectation standpoint.
No one needs to ask my opinion of this because the Fields syndicate raged this entire offseason. Okay, so let's move now further away from the quarterback room. So let's assume Rodgers comes back. Who's the most important non-quarterback for the Packers this year?
That's a good question. It's funny too because I think most people's gut reaction to that question would probably be Devontae Adams, but people forget the Packers have won every game that Devontae Adams has missed under Matt LaFleur, which is crazy when you think about all the kind of headlines and narratives about a lack of weapons and how they have nothing after Adams, and yet whenever Adams misses games, they still win. Mm-hmm. Yeah, that's a really good question. I would probably go with, would jump up to, the idea would be David Bakhtiari, but he is probably going to miss a couple games there at the beginning of the year. And with Elton Jenkins in the fold, you just kick Elton out there and you're kind of good. So yeah, I don't know, man. That's a pretty tough one. I would probably say maybe Jair because of his ability to completely eliminate people and the luxury that gives you, especially with a new defensive coordinator coming into town with a new system, new scheme. I mean, Jair is a queen on a chessboard as far as his power and what he allows you to do. So to me, yeah, I'd probably go with Jair on this one.
I think that's a really good.
I think Adrian Amos is also like an extremely important player for the Packers.
One of the most underrated. I said on a video the other day, I think he's one of the most underrated players in the league. I don't think there's any question, not just on the Packers, but in the league. Mm-hmm. I think he is so good and gets almost no press about it. He doesn't make huge flash plays, but he is really, really good at the safety position.
He's so consistent.
But to me, Jair is just a little bit more important because of just, again, the power of everything you can do because you have him.
Let me posit one for you, Aaron, because I think this gets talked about a lot, but I want to look at it from you looked at Devontae Adams and said, okay, the games that he hasn't played, they've won. And I want to then fast forward to the game that they did end up losing to the Tampa Bay Buccaneers. And, Devontae on his own, like, Devontae is amazing. And I am the first to cop to, like, I did not respect Devontae Adams' game enough. That guy is an absolute wizard. And in that game, though, you saw a team like the Bucs with, like, 6 options. And the Bucs obviously ended up beating the Chiefs, who have 2 options. And is there a thing where it's like, yes, we can win regular season games without our ace, but we need even more than our ace to win, like those really big games against great teams. And so maybe the most important player is one that we don't know yet that ends up making that offense more multiple.
Well, here's the thing, though. Like, I understand that kind of thinking, but you also have to remember that, I mean, Aaron Jones, who they just re-signed to a big money deal, had probably one of his worst games as a Packer in that game, and then got knocked out due to injury. To me, the stars have to play their best games in the biggest stages, and that didn't happen. Whether it's Aaron missing Devontae on a touchdown because he threw late, whether it's Devontae dropping a back shoulder in the end zone, a play he's made a million times, whether it's Aaron Jones fumbling deep in his own end, any one of those things goes the other way. And don't even get me started on Kevin King having a brain fart in coverage. Any one of those things goes the other way, the Packers probably win that game.
Well,
or the fact that David Bakhtiari suffers a freak injury in practice. So of course the Packers tackles get abused in that game, etc. I just don't think you can overreact to those set of circumstances.
Sure.
The Packers have a really good team, and they have a lot of ways to hurt you on offense. I just don't see it as, okay, yeah, we got to load up in case Devontae's taken out. They've shown they can do that. They've shown they have the ability to do that. They also would help. It would also help if they don't become so Devontae focused on their offense. And I know a lot of people put that on Aaron, but that's clearly Matt as well. You know, they draw up so many plays for him and they feed him the ball so much, which I love. He's super talented. But man, you talk about, well, Brady had all these different ways to hurt the Packers. The Packers had those ways. They just kept trying to make the same thing work. And to me, that was the fatal flaw. I mean, you talk about, okay, they needed somebody else to step up because Adams was doing whatever or taking away or what have you. MVS absolutely balled out in that game.
Yeah.
Go back and watch it. And I'm not talking just the numbers. The numbers are good. But just his play on the field, he was phenomenal. Probably the best guy on the offensive side of the ball. And that's a guy who had been maligned all year. Talk about the drops, etc. He has that huge touchdown to get him going. There's a couple other nice big catches. Great work in the running game. I mean, they have the pieces necessary. And I think that's why Brian took a look, said, nope, I'm bringing the whole band back for one more push. Because I do think in that game in particular, their best players didn't play their best games, and they were somewhat kind of a victim of the timing of that game.
Do you think that's what makes analyzing the Packers difficult, though? Because, you know, and I don't mean to bring up like old memories, but like, they're a team that's made a bunch of NFC title games, which I think is probably more of a symbol of the, you know, of efficiency of what they're doing. Like, it's a good thing that they're making. Like, you'd rather make the NFC title game consistently than not. And then every single time there seems to be something that happens that
crazy, frustrating thing.
Yeah, and it's the easy thing to say is, look, they didn't play that well that day, or they got unlucky. And in the case of the Seahawks game like 6-7 years ago, it's like they just made a couple bonehead plays, you know, like Morgan Burnett fell down when he should have run it in for a touch, like all this stuff. And it's like
Clinton Dix misjudging the 2-point conversion. I mean, there's like 20 different things.
Yeah, exactly. So then, you know, and granted, like, we all like to gravitate towards things, and I think we look at one team that was in the Super Bowl last year who literally took that game as the gospel for their entire offseason. Yeah. And it's like, and I fear that you're missing out on literally everything. Like, you change your course of action to address the O-line when, like, the honest to God reason that you lost the Super Bowl is because 80% of your O-line's injured, and that's not something you can plan for now.
Right.
Is that might be a feather in the cap of Green Bay's sort of like, because you're right. I mean, I
totally get what you're saying, but like the idea of like not wanting to overreact to a single game is something that every personnel guy will preach and they'll talk about, but sometimes it happens. Mm-hmm. I mean, whether it's, you know, or 2 games in the case of Ron Wolf when Randy Moss completely torched them his rookie year, and Ron Wolf turns around and literally drafts 3 defensive backs the next year right in a row, and then talks about, oh, it's not because of Randy Moss. Of course it was because of Randy Moss, but that turned out to be a mistake, you know. And I do think time throughout the NFL will show you can't do one of two things in general. You can't overreact to one game, and you can't overreact to one opponent, even if it's somebody in your division. Yes, you want to beat people in your division. You want to win the division. But if you're so focused on one of those 2 things, you do tend to leave yourself open for, you know, weaknesses and mistakes in other areas. And I think the better job you do of being able to draw back and look at it from a 30,000-foot view, which I think the Packers have done a good job of, you're probably going to build a much better, more well-rounded team. Now, but to your point, you get to a bunch of NFC Championship games and you lose them all. Questions start getting asked. You know, it's like, why can't we get over the hump? I mean, look, it took shipping out Andy Reid after a ton of NFC Championship game losses for the Eagles to finally go win a Super Bowl.
Yeah.
You know, they finally got, you know, obviously they got McCarthy out of there. Now they've brought in Matt LaFleur to been to 2 NFC Championship games. Still can't get over the hump. There's one common denominator there. Yeah. It's the quarterback.
Yeah, having a quarterback. And we wrote an article this week about sort of like how long, or you retweeted, how long on average do you stay elite? Packers' second longest tenure of being, like, during the new CBA, they've spent almost 50% of the weeks 4 points better than their opponents on average, which is remarkable. The Patriots are 75%, which is just absurd. But as you said, the common denominator is quarterback play. And I think the Packers probably would be in that 60 to 70% range if they didn't get unlucky in 2013 and he broke his collarbone. 2017, I think, was the other one. And even 2018, remember, he injured his knee and he played through it.
Or if
Like
they had such a bad division. I mean, like the NFC North hasn't necessarily been a juggernaut.
They've had one,
but
the NFC North has had one competent team aside from the Packers every year. You don't know which one it is.
The
Right?
You don't know
AFC
which one it's
said
going to be,
zero.
right? Exactly.
But-
It's so true.
So let's wrap this up with a little bit of now from your lens where the division stands. So the Packers,
boy.
is my favorite
My
part.
mentions are always fun after this.
This
Okay,
is going to
yes,
be great.
please.
Look, we deliver the goods. Green Bay Packers, as I mentioned, -177. The Minnesota Timber Vikings are 3-1. The Chicago Bears are +450. And the Detroit Lions, who might actually just be literal lions running on the field by the time the season starts, are 25-1. What do you make of those odds there, Aaron?
First, I want to ask you a question: Dan Campbell or Wayne Fonts?
Oh, Wayne Fonts all day.
Okay. Me too, by the way. I'm just
I
trying
miss.
to.
You know what I miss? What I really miss is when like Detroit would be winning. Because Wayne was a good.
Wayne was
coach, but
great.
They would be winning, and then something would go wrong. Whether it was a deep pass against his defense, or maybe his offensive line allowed a sack or whatever. Inevitably, the Fox camera would cut to Wayne Fonts on the sideline, and he had the greatest befuddled coach face of all time. Time.
had a-
Just like, what the hell just happened? Like what? Like it was the best, and you could count on it. You could set your watch by it. Like once they faced some adversity or something bad, like significantly bad, happened to his team, he would have that look on his face.
He also had a
hold
first
on.
ballot Hall of Fame windbreaker.
I have an idea here. What I need from you guys, because I'm a young idiot. What are the best? So let's put them out here. And Zach, who's our social production lead here on the call, is going to find these and get them for us. Best coach faces, whether it's like befuddled, angry, whatever. So you've got Wayne Fonts befuddled. What are the other ones?
Wayne
that come to
Fonts
mind?
befuddled. You got to go. Obviously, Chucky's in there. There's a million different Gruden faces you can pull. It's funny. I think it's not so much a face, but the look of Belichick after a bad call that goes against him. That's always classic. I'm trying to think of others that I just absolutely are kind of seared in my brain. I don't know how far back you want to go, but we're talking Wayne Fonts. So there's the spittle from Mike Ditka on the sideline.
Ditka's good.
There was always spit flying out of that man's mouth when he's yelling at his players. And of course, I mean the all-time great is Buddy Ryan when he's about to deck someone.
I always thought Buddy Ryan was great. I thought Rich Kotite just had that the lights are on but no one's home look.
No one's home, look, right.
I thought that was great.
The blank stare was great.
My favorite NFC North one, or NFC Central, what it was, is the one victory the Vikings have actually had in the last 40 years, which was when they drafted Randy Moss in '98 at pick 21.
Yep.
And ESPN goes into the Vikings war room, and Dennis Green has the biggest shit-eating grin on his face that he, for once, his entire coaching career, pulled one over on the whole league and got Randy Moss. We're talking about Moss all day today. That was Dennis Green's smile was one of most of the time it was tepid, but that was the first and only time I ever saw the guy truly happy about the state of that team.
He knew.
He knew. He fucking knew. It was great.
No question.
I was going to say my favorite was Mike Singletary right about before he was going to take a shit in the middle of the locker room.
Amazing. Great pull.
I've heard it was
That's a great
legendary.
pull.
I can't confirm. Okay, let's get back to the division question, though. I'll repeat the odds here. Vikings 3-1, Bears +450, and Lions 25-1. What do you make of those? Do you agree?
Yeah,
disagree?
I think that's pretty in line with my expectation anyway.
Really?
I think the Vikings obviously suffered a ton of injuries on defense last year, and they had a lot of young guys, right? And Zimmer, I mean, people talk about Zimmer's coaching job or whatever, but he was kind of playing with half a deck there towards the end of the season on defense, especially. But hey, man, you got Dalvin Cook. I think Cousins is underrated. I know no Packers fan wants to hear that, but I think he is a good quarterback. And I think Zimmer will have those guys ready to play on defense. I think, the Bears, obviously it's all about the quarterback. How long do they take until they go to Fields? What does he look like once he gets in there? They've got the Hogs on defense. They're going to keep them in plenty of games. And Detroit, so I'm not really going to go too much into that. But, yeah, to me, I think the Vikings are the problem for the Packers this year. I don't think there's any question.
So what changed? Because last year with Mitchell Trubisky and Nick Foles, you said that the Bears were the team that scared you the most.
Last year the Vikings were going under they had just traded away the receiver and got all these assets, and they had a ton. They have 15 new guys.
Yeah. No off season really. So it
no
was
off
sort of
season. I just didn't think it was going to gel quick. And I thought the Bears had the defense. They just needed competent quarterback play, which I thought Foles could possibly give them. That didn't quite happen. But yeah, no, to me that's the big switch. And like if the Vikings can stay healthy, they got another year under their belt for their young guys. I think Zimmer's a hell of a coach, and I think they're strong up front, which is where you've got to be strong on defense. And he can mix and match coverages better than anybody. I think you talk about their ability to. If they continue to lean into the running game, which I think they will and should, just manage the game, Kurt, and the defense will keep things close, and I think they're going to win a lot of ball games.
Yeah, I'm not as – I remember our podcast last year, I unequivocally said I think the Vikings suck, and I thought they were going to be awful.
Interestingly, he said that every single podcast since. So,
yes.
But I don't have as strong of an opinion. In fact, I do have a Vikings ticket to win the North at 4-1, which I think is a good bet. But, I do think the thing is, everything that the Vikings do this year, I think, will work to the benefit of the Packers. And here's what I mean. If they stink, that's obviously going to work to the benefit of the Packers. But Kirk is coming off of 2 really good seasons. If he improves again, they're probably going to have to sign him to an extension, which I think is a long-term bad play for Minnesota.
A plus
and
for
a
the
plus
Packers,
for
definitely.
Green Bay, because as what we talked about, your Cousins is a good quarterback. I think a good quarterback, but I don't think that team, because Harrison Smith's getting older, Donnell Hunter might leave at some point. Their elite talent is kind of going out the door, and if they replenish it, I don't think they're going to be able to do as well when Kirk makes what Dak is making.
Right.
And so to me, this is a season where the Vikings may very well. It might be like 2 years ago where they win 10 games.
Yeah.
But I think long term, they're not scaring the Packers. I don't know.
It's interesting.
I hear you.
My take on it, Aaron, I'm curious your thought, is the Packers might be the biggest threat from an average margin of victory standpoint. Mm-hmm. But if I'm thinking about actually losing a game I have to win, the thing that worries me most is Justin Fields being good, because Justin Fields being good is better than Kirk Cousins. He's dynamic as an athlete.
The ceiling is much higher.
Right.
Yeah,
And so what worries me, and I would even think about the Lions in this way, it's what worries me long term, and what worries me if everything hits. And so in this season, to me, the Bears have the chance to actually unseat. If things click, they could beat an Aaron Rodgers led Packers.
Right?
Absolutely.
The major if is Matt Nagy. What have we seen from Nagy that would ever have us thinking, oh boy, he's really going to unlock this kid?
Well, I disagree. I guess we've had this take yesterday, but
expound upon it, because this is you were really honest.
Because I think if you look at all the graphs of how a quarterback grades versus how efficient the offense actually is, the Bears are almost always a team that's way more efficient than the quarterback plays. And I think it was way more pronounced in 18. I thought 19 was Nagy's mission to prove to the owner that Trubisky sucked. So then he ran a normal offense, right? And then last year they were last year I thought his play calling with Nick Foles was awful, but he went.
It was mind numbing.
Yeah, he went 6-3 in the games that Trubisky played. Trubisky. Say what you want about Trubisky, but both he and the Bears are 8 games over 500 during the Nagy situation. And to me, I think that's part. Now, granted, I don't know what's caused. I don't think it's causal. I don't know, but the defense is clearly a good thing for them. But there's a ton of teams with great defenses that's aren't 8 games over 500 the last 3 years. Mm-hmm. And I think he's done a decent job of extracting more out of that ability that Trubisky has, which is, I think, remarkably limited.
I guess. To me, I just think there have been way more opportunities with the talent that they had on hand. Maybe not last year, but the years he's been there. I just see a guy who really reminds me of way early Andy Reid, in the sense of he's got a lot of things that he can do. He loves cooking in the kitchen, but man, sometimes you just need something simple for dinner. And he's always trying to make this 6-course meal when it's dude, I just want some ramen.
Yeah,
that will win you ball games.
Well, and
wait, are we
and
talking
that's not I can't point to a single he calls the screen on 3rd and 3 way too much. I'm not going to break it down to that level, but it does seem that every time I'm watching the Bears, it's what are you doing? Like the Nick Foles stretch was embarrassing.
Why is Cordero Patterson running from the I formation? Like there's stuff like that.
Because he's a generational talent.
True. But they also saw the Patriots do it, so they were like, okay, let's try that.
Well, my question is, like, what kind of ramen are you talking? Like, is this microwave top ramen, or are you?
You know, it's a nice ramen place. Obviously, it's the NFL. You got to do.
Yeah, I mean, you're a New York guy. Like, good ramen. Nothing to shit on. Good ramen.
I know, but I'm just saying it's a lot easier to make that ramen than it is like to go out and go to 21 Club.
I'm just trying to stick up for the ramen chefs out there making beautiful meals.
I do think against Green Bay he has looked particularly bad. I will say that. Like I do think.
Yeah, and that might be the bias on my end, right? Because that's obviously where I've seen the most of his work. Which is weird when you're struggling against Mike Pett. It's just
right. Well, and that's the thing. But like the Green Bay defense, even when they were bad, were athletic. And I always thought that the Bears did a good job of getting athletic players like Tariq Cohen and those guys into space. And the Packers.
That's what always worried me, but then it just never really materialized.
Yeah,
and that's kind of maybe that's the perception that I'm dealing with.
Would you rather bet? Would you rather bet? And I'm going to ask both of you this question. Would you rather bet Minnesota at 3-1 or Chicago at plus 450?
Probably Minnesota, 3-1.
Eric,
I mean, I'm going to go Bears.
Yeah.
At this price,
and you've been yelling about how the Vikings suck for so long.
And I don't even think they suck that bad now. But I would take them at a better price. But like I think right now, like neither team is competing with Green Bay if Rodgers is playing. And you get average outcomes. Like, it's just not happening.
Right.
But
it's funny because the Vikings showed how they can beat the best way to beating this Packers team last year in Lambeau.
Yeah.
When they just took the air out of the game and completely kept it out of Aaron's hands.
Ask God for 30-mile-an-hour winds. Yeah, that's the way to beat Green Bay.
The wind definitely helps. The wind definitely helps.
It was actually just Zimmer puffing his way down the field.
Touchdown.
Yeah.
And then the second half, they just never let Aaron have the ball.
Yeah,
that was an underratedly weird game.
It was so weird. The whole game, that whole afternoon.
I remember that. So our simulations have Minnesota winning. Both these teams not winning more than 15% of the time, but Chicago just barely winning a couple of percentage points more frequently than Minnesota. I am not showing my Justin Fields back tattoo. It's a full one, Aaron, by the way. But you know that's where I stand.
It's all right. My Jordan Love tramp stamp will be revealed at some point. It's all good.
Can we reveal it? I just want to be there. Now that COVID, the pandemic coming to an end, maybe I can, we can join. We'll go to a ramen place, and then a couple sakis in.
An event partnership between PFF and Cheesehead TV.
I'm here for it. I want to get you out of here on this. We've had a lot of talk about best deep threats of all time.
Oh God.
And
this is such nonsense. My God.
I know, but such
internet fodder.
I
literally did a rant yesterday about how the ranking of stuff and the greatest of all time stuff is so overblown at this point.
I agree.
It is all the internet has become.
We have 3.5 months left. We got to tune in.
I agree. I think it's overblown on Twitter. It's overblown on Twitter, but I enjoy
overblown.
I enjoy talking about it in a conversation with people whose opinions I respect.
We talked about it at the start of the show, right?
Yeah.
Like the idea of sitting down, having a beer, and having a chat with someone about it. Like there, I'm down. I'm cool. Yeah, you're right about that.
Who would you pound the table for?
Randy Moss, no question.
Yeah,
I get Tyreek Hill is awesome. I understand it. I know Jerry Rice was amazing. Hell, I go back to Don Hudson, incredible deep.
He was good.
But
I actually threw a name into
was unparalleled.
I actually threw a name into our show notes that I'm thinking that you might like. James Lofton.
Lofton was great, but he wasn't as great as Moss.
Well, of course. I'm just saying,
he was great
in the conversation.
He wasn't no Randy Moss.
Yeah.
I think I would take Moss with one hand.
Yeah, of course.
Seriously.
My sneaky one though, and I've been pounding the table for this in chats on the internet. I think Isaac Bruce should get way more attention for being the fifth most productive receiver of all time. With Tony Banks at quarterback for half his career.
Yeah, right.
He
ran one of the prettiest post routes of all time.
And he caught a game-winning touchdown in the Super Bowl for the Rams. Yep. The St. Louis Rams have a Super Bowl title.
Well, remember,
and the Vikings don't.
Was it who was it? Who was the defensive coordinator? Somebody, was it Dungy? I can't remember who it was, but somebody threw a zero blitz at Warner. and then he
Yeah.
found the one-on-one with Bruce.
That was Greg Williams was the
Greg
defensive
Williams,
coordinator for
it
the
was a
Titans.
zero
He was
Who
like-
the fuck did you
Yeah,
think
yeah.
it
blitz
was?
heavy.
Yeah,
Like,
it was an all-time great coaching staff because you had Jeff Fisher wearing like the Old Navy performance fleece
Yes.
on the sideline during that Super Bowl, and then you had
I just remember it was the one time almost the entire game where
Yeah.
they sent heavy pressure.
Yeah, because
and
they were
Warner
so afraid
completely burned them.
that was a weird time in NFL because in '98 you had the Vikings offense, which was just amazing, led the
Insanity,
league,
right.
and then the next year the Rams offense, the greatest show on turf, was like even more freaky. And so the Titans, I thought Greg Williams did a great job in that Super Bowl.
Made everything just that much crazier because you could utilize him any which way.
Yeah, you had
I mean, that was- he was
Azakim,
like
you
the
had
absolute
Torrey Holt
wild
as a
card.
rookie. Yeah, it was
Absolutely.
amazing.
I actually lied. I had one more question, and
All right.
this shows how much I respect you. We do a segment on our show where we recommend. We just started. We recommend things that we've tried to our listeners.
Right.
And I'm curious, anything, over the course of the past, 6-8 months, whatever it is, a movie or something you've purchased or a thing that you've implemented in your lifestyle that you would recommend as a man of taste to
You were doing
us?
great right up until that.
Yeah.
Actually, a good friend of mine turned me on to. It's not a gratitude journal, but it is a gratitude method. When I wake up every single morning, I take a minute rather than reaching for my phone, which is how I existed for a very long time.
Same.
I wake up, I let my feet touch the ground as I roll out of bed, and I center myself, and I list in my head. I don't say it out loud, but I list in my head 3 or 4 things that I'm really grateful for, and it really has made a difference to how I approach each and every day. It sounds simple, and it is, but it has made it has had a profound effect on me. And so I highly encourage anyone, if you're maybe struggling with anything in your life as far as like distraction or anxiety or what have you, your feet hit the ground in the morning, just take a second, list in your head 3 or 4 things that you are grateful for before you start your day. And it makes a world of difference.
I like that. That was the right way to end this
Yeah.
podcast. We always appreciate
We're
it.
grateful that you have come on the show.
Yeah.
Yes,
Ah, well
there you
played,
go.
well played,
You've
well
got
done,
one
well
down. There it is. Aaron Nagler, Cheesehead TV. You can find him on Twitter and anything at Aaron Nagler. I believe that's your.
That's the one.
That's the one. And anything Packers related or music related. He has some good music tips as well that I happen to enjoy. So go check him out. Aaron, thanks for hanging out, buddy.
Absolutely. Thanks a lot for having me on again, guys.
As usual, special thanks to Aaron for hanging out with us. He's always very generous with his time. I want to ask you, just as we close out, what was the most interesting thing, your big takeaway from hearing him talk, particularly about the Packers, I guess?
Well, I think he believes that Rodgers is going to return. I think that's big. He also believes that Rodgers' return will lead to a run by the Packers, which, given how well they've done the last 2 seasons and how weak the NFC is certainly a reasonable assumption to make. So I thought that was great. I also think, like, when we talk about fan bases like Green Bay and like Pittsburgh, like, there are these like long drawn out, sort of histories where these fan bases and these teams don't get to experience these things very much.
Right.
So then when there are possibilities for, quarterback changes or coach changes or being bad for a couple of years, like these, like, it's really hard. And I think that that's where we get some pushback because, we view the Green Bay Packers as just another franchise when in reality, like, they've had a historic run over the past 30, 40 years. And if that is coming to an end, it's going to be pretty abrupt for anybody that really follows the team.
Yeah, I'll say my non-Rodgers takeaway was his belief in the Vikings being potentially a bigger threat than the Bears, and we talked about that. That was something that I hadn't really thought about, all the rookies coming to be.
I think that's reasonable. By the way, in the betting markets, I know our friend Ben Baldwin asked, like, why is everybody so low on Tennessee?
Yeah.
The Tennessee Titans this year are the Vikings last year, where, like, you lose a lot of skill players, you lose a lot of players in the secondary, you're not quite good rushing the passer, and you have a good draft. Like, we all liked the Vikings draft last year, but especially in a pandemic offseason, it's just going to take longer.
Well, and the Vikings hit as big as you can hit on their first draft pick.
Yep.
You know, and
they don't have the defensive front that Aaron said. Like I don't think Michael Pierce and Dalvin Tomlinson are the second coming of the Williams wall. And I think Hunter, there's still a non-zero chance he's traded. So I'm not as bullish on that defense maybe as he is, but it does stand to reason that they're rookies from 20 and 19 will emerge and play well this year.
My big takeaway from it, and I said this, alluded to it, is just like how often real world people situations show up in things that we feel like are like these mythical worlds. I think a lot of people look at the NFL and they go like, oh, it's a world I could never understand. I could never be in it. You know, far be it from me to understand what's going on. It's like, no, actually, this is a communication issue. It's something that happens all over the place. You can apply it to your own life and think about how that's either burned you in the past or can help you in the future. And it, you know, like I always think about this too with people in positions of power who have achieved great things. The ability to be arrogant after you feel like you've done something right it's so easy. And I do think that plays into this too, like a desire not to communicate with someone who could reasonably be thought of as being more powerful and more of the reason that the team is successful than you are, certainly I feel like is in play. And I just think it's cool, like to see that something that big and that far out there really boils down to something that simple.
Yeah, and I think, yes, you're absolutely right. And I think that that's where a lot of mistakes are made, right? Because you know, we live in a pretty winner-take-all society. Like this is a fun statistical discussion, but like we live in a winner-take-all society in many ways. Mm-hmm. And there's been studies that like the difference between, I think the book is called Success versus Luck. It's actually a very good book. Like the difference between the 80th percentile and the 99th percentile is less. It's more noise than signal, but the 99th percentile individual gets all the spoils. Yep. And then that person is then in charge. So like Brian Gutekunst is like among all the guys that he was talking about, you know, in that, by the way, UWL grad, all the way through that, like he's the one that emerges. And there's a bunch of people, you know, so he gets to make all these decisions, right. But the difference between him and the next best person for the GM job may have just been noise, but you have like sort of the arrogance and arrogance is the wrong word, but you have the assuredness that may not be necessarily like following from that move.
And I think the key thing that he pointed out was like, this is Mark Murphy.
Yeah.
He should be the one that understands how this works and should have the comfort, you know, the understanding, the like, you know, this is why you hire people with experience, you know, right? Yeah. Like they are able to take their experiences and apply them forward. So fascinating. That's why I love that we had Aaron on.
The interesting thing, I will say, the last interesting thing he said that I thought was he does not come off of his stance that you should draft quarterbacks when you don't need them, which I think I'm more convinced now than ever. If you have a Hall of Fame quarterback, you should just let it ride.
I'll push back.
Deal with the badness.
I'm going to push back on that a little bit. Aaron Rodgers statistically was someone that we did not feel was playing at a Hall of Fame level at that point. I don't disagree with you. Like I don't think what you're saying is wrong.
Yeah.
But I'm saying that I think what Aaron is saying is if you just communicate well, this is a non-story. Yeah. But that when you're looking at how Rodgers had performed, it was something that made some rational sense. Now, I wouldn't have done it personally. You know, I wouldn't have traded up for Jordan Love. But I think the concept of taking a quarterback is not offensive.
I think the impulse to move on from Rodgers was natural, and I think it came from a place that there was factual reasons to do it. In my opinion, when he's a Hall of Fame QB like that, if he's capable of this is also part of the Matt Ryan story too. You either move on before you take the next guy, or you just let it ride. To me, that's the course I would have taken. But I can, as I said with Aaron, I can understand fans of a franchise, many of whom have not even lived through the bad times, like wanting that bridge. In the research we've done this week, it's like the spoils to being average are just not that good, not right? There. Like just be great, or let them ride off in the sunset, and then be dog shit for a couple of years and get your next guy. That's my
That's your word.
That's
and
my
you're
word.
Sticking to it. That was our podcast. We thank you guys all for hanging out with us. We love you. Have a great rest of your week. We'll see you all Sunday night. Peace out.